Hi, I'm Ed from CellarHand, and today we're going to go digging out a hidden gem from Piedmont in Italy. The producer is this one, Cigliuti, a very small family estate based in Neive in the Barbaresco production zone. The one we'll take a look at is this, the 2018 Cigliuti Langhe Nebbiolo. So if you haven't heard of this estate, don't kick yourselves, it's not your fault, it's tiny. In fact, it's more famous probably for being unheard of than it is for making great wine. Here's what I mean by that. Antonio Galloni is the critic who for many years covered Barolo, Barbaresco, etc. for The Wine Advocate before starting off his own publishing entity called Vinous Media. Here's what he had to say about Cigliuti a couple of years back. Cigliuti is arguably the most under-the-radar estate in Barbaresco when it comes to looking at the wines and comparing quality with visibility in the market. And here's what that same critic wrote less than a year ago. I have said this now for many years. Cigliuti remains one of Piedmont's truly under-the-radar estates. So you get the gist, and clearly it's time to get these guys way out into the open. First of all, a little bit of background. The winery was founded 4 generations ago in the village of Neive, about 12 kilometers from Alba. Neive is one of 3 townships, the other 2 being Treviso and Barbaresco itself, that together are home to practically all of the Barbaresco producing vineyards. The author of the modern, if you can call it that, chapter of Cigliuti's history is Renato Cigliuti. The grandson of the winery's founder, Renato was born way back in 1938. He was educated to primary level and thereafter put out to work in the fields. Post-World War II, when his contemporaries were fleeing the countryside in their droves, Renato, passionate farming boy that he was, stayed. His father Leone and uncle Romualdo sold grapes and unbottled wine on the local market, and it was those second-generation brothers who gave the estate its current name, Fratelli Cigliuti. These days, though, the estate is in actual fact run by 2 sisters, and to go to Galloni again, Renato's daughters Silvia and Claudia, quote, continue to turn out absolutely gorgeous wines. So this remains steadfastly a tiny traditional estate, farming vines on 2 close-by vineyards in Neive. These are the Serrabuela Cru and Bricco di Neive. Now, Renato is still going strong among the vines in his 80s, bottled his first Barbaresco back in 1964. The 60s, of course, was the decade when Barbaresco started to emerge from the shadow of its more famous neighbour Barolo. The likes of Gaia and Bruno Giacosa are justly credited with that shift in perception, but humble Renato as well played a pretty pivotal role. He found himself faced with a tricky question. How do you help the region gain recognition when it's really made up of small farmers who don't have the deep pockets for globe-trotting self-promotion? So what he did, Renato turned to a friend of his for advice, and that friend was none other than Barolo's defender of tradition and integrity, Bartolo Mascarello. Mascarello said his support was conditional though. He would only help if a focus on quality lay at the forefront of these Barbaresco growers' efforts to spread the word. That meant eschewing the common Italian recipe of high yields and half-truths, instead growing honest wines that couldn't waver in their commitment to quality, from vine all the way to bottle. And that is exactly what characterises Cigliuti. As I said, everything is small, and that's exactly the way they want it to stay. Claudia, Silvia, their mother Dina, and father Renato want to be able to do everything with their own hands from the very start to the very end of the wine. This is the best way to transfer the characteristics of the vineyards to the wine, Claudia told me this week as she readies herself for the 2020 harvest. So the range is correspondingly pretty small. Neive is known as the township of the 4 wines, those being Nebbiolo, Barbera, Dolcetto, and Moscato. But the estate doesn't produce Moscato and made its last Dolcetto in the 2017 vintage, after which those vines were supplanted by more Nebbiolo. So there are 2 Barberas and 3 Nebbiolo wines these days. 2 of those are Barbaresco, one from younger vines in Bricco di Neive and is called Vierte. The other is from the Serrabuela Cru. In fact, Renato was the first to use the name Serrabuela on a label in the 1970s, and for 30 years, the only producer to give his Barbaresco the name of the cru. So this is the 3rd Nebbiolo. Like a baby Barbaresco, it's the Langhe Nebbiolo. 2018, it comes from 20-year-old vines growing on the Bricco di Neive. Vineyard has a southwestern aspect, sits on calcareous sandy soils at 350 meters above sea level. So as with all the wines, it undergoes spontaneous fermentation in steel vats at controlled temperatures. All up, it spent around 20 days on the skins, was then aged for 5 months in steel and another 5 months in Slovenian oak barrels, thereby spending a heck of a lot less time in wood than Barbaresco would. Now, of course, this is young, so freshly opened, I found this fairly welcoming and complex for sure. Very clean with notes of violet, strawberry and mulberry on the nose, with a bit of menthol, tarragon, orange peel notes and gravelly earth. On the palate, for the first considerable while actually, it was a little bit more muted, medium bodied with red and black fruits, a little slow to rise. Plenty of fine tannin, not hard, scratchy tannin like it can be with these young Nebbiolo. Thick and silty, but the wine a little bit balled up, not quite running free. With time and air, though, this unfurls really nicely. That tannin extends evenly, the pure fruit pushing through, the layers of the nose coming through. It extends really satisfyingly, as good Nebbiolo does, with floral notes and aniseed creeping in on the fresh finish with good acid cut. Now, like I said, an under-the-radar estate, but well worth teasing out into the open. To learn more about the wines of Cigliuti or anything else in the CellarHand portfolio, please check out our website. That's www.cellarhand.store, or feel free to send us a direct message at CellarHand Wine or to me at Merrison. In the meantime, though, stay safe, drink responsibly and discerningly, and thanks, as always, for listening.